Okay, this is Senate Institutions. Today is April 22nd, 2026, and today we're working on the Capitol bill, and so we're going to hear from Ledge Council on the updates. We will not be doing a vote today, just so everybody's clear on that. And then we'll talk about some other items that are in here. Okay,
So afternoon, everyone. Don Gray with the Office of Legislative Counsel. I will screen share with you in a second. I don't think any of this is going to surprise you. This is just recording or memorializing the decisions that I have heard from the committee thus far. I have retained the yellow highlighting that you saw in the first draft 1.1, that reflected changes against the House proposal. And in this version, I have green highlighting to indicate the newest changes, so both should be visible. And with that, I will jump in. So we are in draft 2.1. And we are veering toward a direction where I may end up moving to a strike all. As you'll recall from last time, currently it's drafted as a sequence of instances of amendment to target those areas where there are changes. But if the changes become sufficiently widespread across all of the underlying sections, then I will just change it to a strike all for ease of readability. But for now, it is a 11-page bill, which is nice, instead of having something that's in the 20s. So in your first instance of amendment, this is touching the section 2, your BGS appropriations. The green highlighting again indicates changes from the last version that you saw. And the change that you see here on the first page is to statewide major maintenance. The House had a little over 9 million in this. And the last version of this had, I think, 8,888,000. So since then, what has happened is that this has been reduced by 350,000, which frees up 350K for EV charging stations. That's not set in the same section. I will talk about that when we get there. Oh yeah, this is a reduction from the last draft of 350K. So I will try to call this out as we go through. Know that Scott and I are tracking the math overall, but I have little notes to myself that say you have this much free. And so right now you technically have, at the start of the bill, 475K freed up total, not relative to the decisions you made last time. That's just what is available from the reduction against the House. If you find it unhelpful for me to talk about this, I will not do it.
that is helpful. Can you give some more detail on what you mean by it?
So there's two different ways to think about to track the money. One is to say, what is the long path that has been taken through drafts 1 and 2 to tell you if you net out even, right? That you've stayed within the box that you have for bonding and that you've stayed within the box that you have for cash. The simpler way to do it, and I will try to call out, that's what the green is meant to indicate when there are changes against the last draft. The simpler way to think about it is the House's bill is even, right? It's neutral. And so if you just make comparisons against the House version, you can ensure that you're tallying up to the same amounts that the House did. So when I say what I say here, the House recommended a little over 9 million. You have here a little over 8.5 million. At this point, you have freed up 475K against the House proposal. So I will talk about the next set of appropriations and how they affect that 475. And when we get to the end of the bonding section, I can then say net even. You have zeroed it out. So
Right. So just to confirm, so that 350,000 for the EV chargers is part of the 475,000.
Exactly. In the end, it will all tally up.
Okay.
Yep. But at this point, against the House, you would say, if you were just comparing at this stage in the draft, against the House, you have 475,000 that you have not spent. Just looking on the first page.
Thank you.
On the second page, again, the yellow calls out what you saw in the previous draft, but reflecting change against the House proposal. And so that's an increase in 25K in the State House entryway upgrades. And so again, if we think about that 475K that you freed up, you've now spent 25,000 of it, which means that you now have 450K left to spend against what the House has proposed at this point in the draft. Okay, we jump next to a green highlighted instance, which means that the whole of this section was not included in the House version, and the reason for that is that the House, in the first draft from the Senate, because you guys in the first instance had agreed with how the House treated Section 3, but there is now a proposed change here. So Section 3 are your appropriations through BGS for the Agency of Human Services. And the change that you see on page 3 is repealing that FY27 $500,000 in bonding for the Northern States Correctional Facility sprinkler system upgrades. To foreshadow, you're going to see that same figure appear later in the cash section. But for now, we are just in the bonding sections. And so with that reduction in 500K, if you think about it, you had 450 available after the last section that we went through. You're now adding in another 500. So currently, against the House proposal, you have $950,000 in bonding that are unspent. They will be spent in the remainder of the sections, though. The third instance of amendment, again, this is fully green highlighted because you have a section here that was not included in the first Senate draft 1.1. And that is the EV charging piece in this section 4. These are appropriations in FY27 to ACCD. And what you see here is 350K provided for electric vehicle charging stations at state buildings. I'll talk about the net number in just a second, but I first wanted to flag the location of this appropriation. This is something that Scott and I discussed. I don't know that we fully know the resolution of where to store the 350. In years past, there was a $1 million appropriation in the cash section through, I believe, BGS for electric vehicle charging stations statewide and state buildings. Almost all of that has been reallocated in this bill, as you know. The discussions I heard were that ACCD may be the better location to route this money. So that is why this is included here. But I would just note that if we were exclusively following historical practice, the cash appropriation was through BGS for these purposes, and I would otherwise have stored it in section 2. So I don't know if you guys want to discuss that at this point to make sure that this is being housed in the right place.
We'll definitely discuss it at some point.
Okay.
But I have a question on the language. Electric vehicle charging stations can that include new charging stations and upgraded charging stations?
I believe so. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's pretty broad language.
Okay.
The limitations you have are on where they can be, right? Safe limits.
Right, but I was just thinking, so it probably wouldn't be maintenance, for example. I mean, it would be a capital expense, so it would be something long-lived is what I think.
I think that's fair. To call out the net figure at this point, you'll recall we were just talking about how you had 950K freed up against the House at this point. You've now spent 350 of it. So after this line item, you have 600K remaining to be spent against the House proposal.
Yes.
Wanda Noli, Commissioner of BGS for the record. Set aside where the discussion is going on, what this is, the original money was appropriated to BGS because it is for electric charging stations on BGS property for state employees and for people using it, was not for public. That was the intent of it. This money, if it's to go for that, I would request that if you support it, it gets appropriated to BGS like a separate line item because it's our sites. It's our site plans and we have oversight of that construction. There, in what you just said, if there are upgrades to existing, that would be under our jurisdiction, not under ACC.
Okay, yes.
And do you have any capacity to even do any more charging or whatever? I mean, $250,000. I mean, are you able to do any of that?
So there, to John's point, I think it was in 22, there was $10 million appropriated to ACCD for charging stations for public and of that 10 million, BGS has an MOU with ACD to use 500,000. We have not put any new charging stations in. With that 500,000 or the $1 million that you are discussing at this point.
So if
Part
we
of
put
it
that
is-
dollars in, it's just gonna sit there. I mean, there's no there's no need for you to have those monies because you're not gonna be able to spend it anyway.
We are working with our energy team on, they've just completed I've asked them, there was not a plan. And so we've asked them to complete a survey and to look at our inventory and how many, we hadn't made the investment because the buildings weren't being utilized, to be absolutely honest with the committee. How working was, utilization was way down, so we had enough stations. We are asking based on the return work and what is the utilization to identify some areas for us to look at. We have not completed that, so I don't know what the result is. I have taken the opportunity to speak with the chair in Montpelier. I would not do anything in Montpelier at this point in time because we need to finish our flood mitigation. We need to be looking at parking. We need to be looking, we may need to use that money for a part of that. But we don't have a plan right now because right now we have to focus on what is it going to look like? How are we going to meet our flood mitigation? How are we going to lose parking spaces? And we know we're going to lose some across the street because of the mitigation plan. So we know there is a need and there's an opportunity. We're just not, we don't have a plan for you. And to have money sit, as you know, we end up reallocating it. And I think that's what you've experienced. We have said we have to continue to support this and we need to have a plan, but I'm not going to, I don't know where the survey will bring us by January of next year, to be honest.
Can I ask you in a different way?
Sure.
Is that $250,000, should you develop a plan going to slow you down from putting in more charging stations, should you decide that you need that, or could we use that $250,000 elsewhere where it might be needed in our village?
Well, Senator, I'll let you as a committee decide on how you'd like to use that money. We have 500,000 that we want to utilize. And so we have that pot of money in that MOU. And then, so I don't have a demand today for more money. And that's why we proposed it be reallocated also the age of the funds I'm saying. But we don't have a plan for it. We are working, our energy team is working on a plan. And what does it look like? I don't have that today and I will not have it before you leave. So I cannot commit that we will spend that 350 in the next fiscal year.
Okay, and we are gonna talk about this tomorrow, just so you know.
Well, we have the commissioner here today, so
We do, but she's probably gonna be here tomorrow. And she knows that we're gonna talk about it. So, yes.
Just a question about process. I mean, if John's going through the changes to date, I have some questions about some things in terms of dollars. I didn't know whether you wanted to go all the way through the changes and then come back and discuss the dollars, whether you wanted to do that as we go along. I just want to know how we would like to proceed.
I thank you, and I think as we go along, it's fine.
Okay.
You're good with that, right? And
They're also not gonna be for me, is my guess, so.
yes,
Sit right here.
Well, that's why I'm asking
Yeah.
how we want to.
and just know that we're not going, I think I said this already, maybe, that we're not gonna vote today.
Understood,
Okay.
but.
Did you have questions to this point that you had held back?
Well, you jumped down to section 4, and my question really was in section 3.
I can scroll back up, it says.
And that
Is it cash?
no, this is bonded dollars and, because that's all we're talking about at this
Yep.
stage is again, going back to the testimony that we received, I heard fairly clearly that BGS is ready to move ahead on the boiler project. And that we are about $1 million short of meeting their short-term goal. They're still going to have to come back in next year to ask for another $1 million to complete that project. But if we don't fund the project, it means the project's going to go into delay. Because you've got some long lead time items there that in the boilers and so forth that have to be ordered long term before they actually get installed. So I'm thinking to meet the need that's clearly right there. We need to figure out how to fully fund or at least get them to the $2 million threshold. Keep that project moving and on schedule. And I take no qualms about some of the places that, we looked at moving some money. I think there are good thoughts. What I'm hearing, I heard yesterday, by example, putting 100,000 to, stormwater utilities. Well, I support the stormwater utilities from the concept of that to deal with stormwater. I heard they have other funding mechanisms to move that forward. And while they'll never turn down additional monies, they don't really need that money to keep the program moving because they have another funding source. So I could see that going towards the boiler project, and also what we're just talking about, the EV charging stations. Again, they have money to move that program forward. So, maybe that's a need that'll come down the road next year to continue that program. But we really need money to keep that boiler project going. So that could be some money that could go back to the boiler program. And then, and that gets us about halfway to that $1 million. And I don't know what everybody else thinks, but that's just a thought on trying to not derail that project. Because I thought anyway, things that we know are ready to go. I think you made good inroads with folk about showing the desire for wanting to support stormwater utilities and so forth. But they have a mechanism that maybe they'll need more money as they get their program more established, and we can look at that down the road. But I'm looking at a immediate kind of need to keep that project on track. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Thank you. And that will be in our conversation. Unless does someone want to respond to that now?
We've already talked about 350K, just to remind you in the comparison against the House version at this point, after appropriating this 350K in bonded dollars at like 27 to EV stations, you have 600K to spend for the remaining bond sections against the House total. On page 4, you have updates to the grant programs for each of the historic preservation grant program and the historic farms preservation grant program. This is an increase of 250K. So total that's 500,000 right across the two. FY27 bonded dollars. And so think about that. You had 600K. You've now spent 500 of that. So you have 100K left remaining spent after these increases to the grant programs. So that's the historic preservation and historic farms preservation grant programs. We come next to language that you've already seen on page 5 in draft 1.1. This is that 100K to A&R for technical support to support those municipalities in designing and implementing stormwater utilities. And that nets out, you're now even against the House proposal, right? You had 100K to spend, and you've now spent that 100K FY27 A&R. So that's nice. The math works out the following acceptance. And we will jump now to cash. So on page 6, again, yellow indicates what was contained in version 1.1. This is $1 million for that statewide 3-acre parcel stormwater compliance. I think that's closer, or maybe is the GovRec. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the House did not include language to that effect. So at this point, again, I'm going to get the comparison against the House in terms of netting out. At this point, you're $1 million in the hole. We need to find $1 million somewhere based on this $1 million increase. On page 7, Subdivision 9, this is your through BGS or AHS for door control upgrades. The house had 700K here. You've increased that to 2.7 million. So that is 2 million additional, 1 million above, meaning that you need to find 3 million somewhere.
Okay, wish it was 3K.
Yeah, that would be easier to find. So you're now 3 million in the hole. Compounding that, subdivision 11 appropriates 500K to the Northern State Correctional Facility sprinkler system upgrades. We talked about this earlier in the bonding section. This is a shift basically in where the source of funds is for this project. It was 500K bonded, it is now 500K cash, which continuing the tally means that you are now $3.5 million the whole as against the House proposal at this point in the draft. But quickly find some answers. So to BGS for AHS for maintenance and renovations of the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. This had been for replacement women's reentry facilities. It is now for maintenance and renovations at the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility. So trying to address immediate fixes is my understanding. The House had, again, for a different purpose, for replacement facilities, 1.25 million. That's now reduced down to 500K, which means you've reduced by 750. Subtracting that from the 3.5 million would give you 2.75 million in the hole. So you still got to find 2.75 million after this. And we find it in one place.
So I'm gonna just have a question. I know there's a lot of suspense, but remember, this is all matches now. But regarding the language, if that's not the right language, we can fix that.
And I'd like an opportunity to chat with you or
Yes.
to the committee about it, whichever your preference is.
Would you like to do it now or later?
I'm more than happy to.
Okay, let's.
Yeah, so first of all, I really, really appreciate the committee and the conversation we had around the Women's Correctional Facility. I know that this is an important project to AHS, to AOA, and to the legislature on accommodating. What does the future correctional facility look like? Where is it going to be? All of those things. We've spent quite a bit of time talking about it. We have, and so we talked about some major improvements in that facility. And when the commissioner was in here, he was talking about maybe, we could create some beds over here. We could do this, or maybe we could look at some other locations to create some space so we could relieve some of that population. So the only thing that I would ask the committee to consider, and I think I have sent this maybe to John, that if you wanted to add language to use for, and of course I'm gonna mess it up now, but for the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility and to make adjustments other places within the correctional facility, because we had sort of, and that was in that under not that sort of draft language, because I'm just going to take you back to the conversation of, maybe there's one of the other correctional facilities, there's a location that we could renovate to accommodate some of the population. So I was looking for a little bit, because we're still working on the list. I think the commissioner had testified about that. I had a really good meeting with the deputy secretary yesterday and with Kristen Kohler, who's testified in here. And we gave them like the site maps of everything and just sort of, looked at the capacity of the building. So the exploration is happening. We have some pretty significant improvements. The biggest one at Chittenden is really the bathrooms, which is estimated between $600,000 and $800,000. And I don't have the money in my major maintenance. So that is why I often suggested, and I gave you the list, that you might want to look at some of those old reallocations, because they're going away next year. A couple of them are.
1.5.
1.5 is going to automatically, if we don't spend it, then it has to be considered for reallocation or reassignment. So that's something for you to consider. And I felt like I just talked to you, Madam Chair, with marbles in my mouth, and I apologize.
That was good. That was
Okay.
helpful.
All right, so, and thank you for understanding what we are trying to address.
Yeah. trying to work together.
And for the record, Scott Moore, joint fiscal. So to Commissioner's point, the repo committee in the House did not look at that money because it's not technically due until next year, but you could repo it earlier, reallocate it to this bill here if you need to.
Oh,
Yes,
There's no
and that's
need
why I
to
gave you
wait.
the list of all of those funds and the cash balance. And Madam Chair and Committee, I just asked Joe Agent to verify what we say we have left over in cash is correct. Cause I hate reallocating money we don't have.
And that's 1.5, is that accurate?
Oh,
There's a list, Senator Major, and we can look, but there were a couple different appropriations over the past 5 years. And I believe there was 1 million and a 500,000. I can double check, but basically that money would statutorily come back to the capital bill bottom line next year, but there's nothing mechanically why we can't take it this year.
I don't know.
well, that
And
is,
I'm getting the cash recap, but go ahead if you want to tell them.
that's significant.
Yeah, because looking at what Commissioner's handed me, these were acts and resolves, Act 50 of 2021. So after 5 years is 2026. So after June 30th, this statutorily has to come back.
So that must be fine.
And,
So we can take it back today if we want to.
Commissioner Manoli, and you said, 800,000 for the
So
correction facility.
our rough estimate for the bath, it's, I've just recently learned, right, because we're doing these working groups, the bathroom facilities, they need to be upgraded, drains, toilets, showers. The low estimate right now is 600,000, the upper estimate is 800, that's if we do them all. But that's a ballpark, and there are estimates, please know that. We've done some repairs to the drain. We've all heard about the issues with the drain.
We've seen,
We've
some of
seen
this,
this, and so we have done some temporary repairs.
yes,
Madam Chair, I'm. And you're absolutely, we've seen this. It's, I don't think that we can wait. Or if we can get that money to, South Burlington, then I think we need to do that. I would give, and going particularly on what the commissioner said as far as the length of time till we get into another facility, it'll be minimum 5 years, if we're lucky. I just, what we have right now, and I've said it time and time again, is very close to a human rights situation with this facility. And I personally, if we are able to commit, and then we're just talking about them going to the bathroom, for God's sakes. I have a very difficult time putting my head down at night, and we're in charge of those people and not having them have the basic things that they need. So that's my opinion.
thank you. I share your concern. Yes,
Could I just ask a follow-up on that? So the bathroom renovations, and I understand we don't have final numbers, but anywhere from $600,000 to $800,000. We had earmarked about $500,000 to help in whatever renovations, try to deal with the situation. So we talked about the bathrooms don't solve the overall problem, I don't assume. So I'm assuming that if we were to claw back that $1.5 million, what you'd really be looking for is more like $1 million or so that would allow you to fix the bathrooms and also give enough money to do some other renovations and so forth to deal with the overcrowdedness. Is that where we are or
And
tell us where we are?
Senator, I appreciate that summary. If we're going to reallocate it potentially the balance next year, to identify it to be used for this project, because we've just started working. We came in here, we testified, you heard from the commissioner. And and we know that there's got to be some interim adjustments to accommodate. So being able to put some of that money towards that, and I don't have numbers. So, if I had a preference, I would ask that you reallocate the balance of that one fund for us to be able to do those moving pieces. And for example, on the bathroom, we might find that it's too expensive, but maybe we could do some of them, right? Start slowly and get there. And as you know, working in correctional facilities is not an easy task, and we have to, secure, et cetera. So it wouldn't be like we go in and rip out every bathroom anyway, because we can't. But it would be a partnership with DOC. But to your point, it's correct. I just, you could do 500, you could do $1 million, or you could do the balance. We'll make it go as far as we can go. But I would hate for us to also be kind of all of a sudden not having enough.
Well, I'm gonna
When we are trying to help everybody accomplish this goal.
react to Senator Major's comment. These people are in our charge and we should take care of them. And so we should look at what's the right number. Is it $1 million? Is it $1.5 million?
We're not gonna know. So we started
Yeah.
talking about this a little bit, I think it was yesterday, about that prior allocation. And it seems like what I'm hearing from the commissioner a little bit more in terms of the other facilities, which we didn't know yesterday, is that we could take the prior allocation, reallocate it now, including the language that it has right now, to the future women's facility, or for use for maintenance and renovation at CRCF, or other facilities for detained women. We want to make it so that it's not just wherever, some language for it's just women that are now currently.
I'm sure it's a get used.
Potential renovations for the woman population, not for other,
That's it.
that's right,
For the female population.
for the female population. But that's a good, I just want to say, you made it all inclusive of either the new facility, because you'd be reallocating it. So if we don't use it here, we could use it towards the other. So you really,
Mhm.
that was a very fungible way
Yeah.
to approach that
Mhm.
money.
Good, yeah.
Got that, John?
Sure did.
You can say it again. Sure.
I haven't seen the language. but-
Are we- I was gonna say, are we gonna run up against just always trying to map this onto the human services language in the policy sections that are prohibiting spending on particular
That's on DCF.
project.
Sorry, John, but yeah, that's on
Well,
that's on the youth facility.
I think this is a really good idea and a really good way to function and propose, but we all need to think about it
Yeah.
for a bit. So this can be something that we talk about again tomorrow. But,
We're not voting. And we don't-
no, we're not voting today, but, there just could be other ramifications. And obviously the House. It's pretty interesting with the allocations, I didn't know that we could, go to that well early.
Yeah.
And is there a 10-year plan or just like an overall plan?
At the start of the biennium, I believe Nick gave you a binder, and in that binder is a 10-year plan
For VGS and
for
The
all
capital
the
bill.
capital bill projects, but I don't know, and that was last year.
yeah, I've seen those before. They're kind of light on detail.
Yep, so major.
But I'm presuming you-
It's at the back, I believe.
Are looking at multi-years.
We look at, so we are looking at multi-year funding for the projects that we have on our list right now. And then every year there seems to be something new, right? So,
All right. So do you have a specific proposal? Or,
well, I think I sort of outlined some language, for
Yeah.
John and Scott with some ideas, and they knew you would be talking about it. But I think it's really building up on that, on what Senator Plunkett just said, where it can be used for the new
Right.
facility, the improvements at the current facility, and to accommodate any space needs for the women detainees or women.
With women's population,
Yeah,
incarcerated
yeah.
population.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that or.
Yes. Yes,
So if you go down that path, you'll need to identify the line items you do want to reallocate, so we can add the reallocation section, if that's the path that you're headed.
And we did identify those
Yep.
dollars and the, yeah.
and where they would go to is this renamed.
Yes, technically it would be in a separate section because those would be bonded dollars.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine.
So you'd have both this. Yeah, you could,
So we'd
you
have-
can change this if you would like to, or you can keep this as is and you can have the bonded dollars for the broader purpose. Just depends on, there's different ways to do it.
Well, if this is cash, we don't change. We're not changing it.
No.
Yeah.
Or at least the dollars of it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
could change the wording, I suspect.
So with the bonding, you would be free to specify whatever expansive purpose you wanted.
Okay,
So in how I understand it, Scott, you're really increasing your bottom line spending of what, let's just say 1.2 million above the house. Because
Yeah.
you're reallocating
Right.
those dollars.
yeah,
Yep, so you pull it in from the pot where it's currently sitting,
right.
and you're using it for the same purpose as the same facility, slightly different purpose.
Yeah, with the assumption that there isn't somebody a plan to already use those dollars next year for some reason.
We
But probably
don't,
you would be the ones who would know that.
well, we have 5 pots of money that if we put spending any money on planning, we have multiple pots of money, then we won't spend all of them in the next year.
Okay,
I think it's 15 million, Scott.
Yeah, it's 15.3, looks like
all right.
15.4. And then, Madam, just so you know, the other parts of that $15.4 million, there would be coming due in 2 more years for the reallocation process. So we'd have to keep our eyes on it and continually reallocate it to this purpose. If you want it to be this purpose and not go to the bottom line and have it be a different priority.
Right. Yeah, I see that in email. Okay.
Wow.
Just because the House has a repo committee doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I'm just getting my head around it. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Well. Lots to talk about.
And I think at times they're thinking about the mandatory clawback, right?
Right.
When there's a permissive kick in as well, 2 years prior, so you have the opportunity to take things back, but less of a push to do so than the mandatory.
Right, and it's not in our typical work, so we just
But
don't
it's,
think about
you
it.
can think of it another way as keeping something fresh, right? If you rededicate to the same purpose, you've essentially kept it fresh for the next 3 years.
And prices only go up. So if
That's
we can do
correct,
something
Madam
sooner
Chair.
rather than later, especially when there's a terrible amount of needs, it's better for the state if we do this. All right,
We'll keep going.
yes,
So just to remind you, for the aggregate total at this point, you need to find 2.75 million in cash to offset the changes against the House. And they are all found in one line item on page 9, which is your Wi-Fi. Subdivision 22 to DOC to work with ADS to install Wi-Fi system in state correctional facilities. House had 3 million. You guys have 250K, and that is the whole of that 2.75 million evens out. So both bonding and cash are even against the House proposal. As we just talked about, you could increase the actual amount of funds available in the bonding section by reallocating. So you could increase the overall amount, but as of draft 2.1, you are even overall against the House.
okay, and this is still, we're in the cash.
Yes, these are all cash sections.
This is the end of the cash.
Correct.
Okay,
You jump next to the policy sections.
just a picky thing on the Wi-Fi. So, Senator Engels mentioned that, there are, satellite. So I just want to make sure install isn't too, limiting.
It's like a physical puck in the building.
Right.
Starlink.
Right.
I don't think I'm following what
Like,
do you think would be
well,
excluded by?
install to me means and put a thing in a thing, as opposed to.
Is that the technical?
Yeah, right. I know. I'm trying not to be too technical. But,
What do you,
like procure or
Yeah.
make happen or implement.
I mean, you
But-
would be able
but
to do
maybe
it
it's-
without the things, just like when you have a project to construct on something, it is implicit in the construction that you have to procure nails and, right, like,
Yes, so maybe it's fine.
so I see that,
So, Madam Chair, members of the committee, when, Kristen testified, the proposal for 250 was to do the actual analysis of the correctional
Mm.
facilities. And to assure that it's appropriately designed, it addresses the safety, security, and confidentiality risk. This says install. I know that they're not, and they were supposed to. You had talked about not coming back, that you wanted updates to the committees and that you want to see the detailed plan at some point next year, not necessarily a report, but with this money, this analysis. That's what they were coming back with, a specific proposal for the physical buildings and cost. I think some would interpret install, meaning they're gonna install.
yes, the
So maybe initiate or something, but.
thing I would
but-
offer is we're
okay.
in the cash sections, which have already been cut out of the.
Oh, yeah,
And it's for the Department of Corrections to work with
Yeah,
ADF.
yes, I
I
think
do
that's a
want to
good,
set up.
I think that's a
So
good
two hundred
point.
fifty thousand to work with ADF, which can encompass anything regarding that project.
okay. And that could just be the long-term goal, is the install.
And the
Okay.
intent is you want that detail, is correct? I think that was
Yeah.
part of the discussion.
Yeah.
The intent is we want something to happen in this book. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. I withdraw my question.
And I agree with Senator Plunkett's rate.
Good.
Just the work with is quite expensive.
Okay.
Policy sections, you've seen these in draft 1.1. Section 14A, the sixth instance of amendment, that's that repeal of the authority to sell in State Street. And then the replacement of section 18, which is just the effective date of the underlying bill with stormwater utilities leases. Discussed before. Nothing new here. Next effect on passage. So that's the whole thing is, again, yellow highlights reflect changes against the House. Of course, green also reflect changes, but they are the latest additions meant to indicate what you guys have done since we were last in here. Fix us between 1.1 and 2.1.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? So, so there's a couple of items that I do want to discuss. Financial items, obviously. I think our process is, complicated in a good way now, because we have more options.
Do you want me still here in the seat or are you guys?
I think we're finished, yeah. Anyone?
I'm not saying in the room. I just didn't know if you wanted me in the.
Yeah, I think Scott,
Madam Chair, I'm half in the hot seat next to John here at the end of the table. But there wouldn't be anything I would add about the spreadsheet because John basically walked through it.
okay,
The spreadsheet would reflect those same changes that were made.
all right, well, then something I wanted to, talk about more, anyway, before all this, came up was, Recovery House. So, Gail, are you available to?
I'm not sure if I could answer the questions, but I'll try.
So if you can identify yourself.
Gail Zatz on behalf of the Recovery Housing.
And so, I would like to, uh, uh, include this request in the capital bill. We heard about the services that they provide, and I'm very impressed, and these are services that the state needs. And, I want to hear from you all to see if there's any concerns.
Well, I think that if we're gonna talk about one, we ought to bring in all the other needs that are needed. We have needs in Derby, we have needs everywhere, and I don't believe that we ought to just be singling out one as a request for it. We should take the testimony on all the needs within or around the state.
Well, this is a building need, and the building is related to the services that they provide. And my understanding is there's only two entities that provide the recovery services or,
Substance use treatment.
okay.
Residential substance use treatment.
So is it accurate that, Recovery House is the only,
My understanding
or
is,
non-private?
yes, my understanding is Recovery House. So there are two that do similar services, Recovery House and Valley Vista. And Valley Vista is a private entity. Recovery House is nonprofit. Recovery House receives about 99% of their revenues through Medicaid. They contract with the state, provide the services essentially in lieu of the state providing the services.
Okay. And just to reiterate, they're the only ones who provide that particular service.
As a nonprofit.
Other than the Valley Vista.
Yes.
And then the other, aspect of it that I found compelling was the, middle of the night,
Generator issue.
yeah, yeah, well, that's what you're asking for, but just the,
Oh, the public inebriate
yeah,
program.
yes. And so can you talk about that a little bit? Cause I think everybody here when we talked about that. But
Yeah, so they have, they're now doing, it's just starting to roll out an online assessments of public, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but
inebriation.
And so they're going to provide this service ultimately statewide. They're in a number of counties right now, but although they are physically located in Rutland, they serve the entire state. People from all over the state come to their facilities. And there is precedent for this. A few years ago, they were awarded through the capital bill, $300,000 for repairs, renovations.
And then just getting back to the public inebriation, that's a remote system that is intended to be for, it's mostly law enforcement. Folks, all over the state. And my understanding was rural, police officers would be even, it would be even more important to them.
Exactly, and they're keeping people out of emergency rooms, and they also provide public inebriate beds.
And they're the only ones who are doing that.
They're not
Is
the-
that correct?
they're not the only one.
No, doing the, public,
They're not.
The virtual screening, the public information, they're the ones that are doing that now. There are a number of beds, and also in lieu of the jails.
Okay.
okay, that's really what I wanted to double check. All right, and that, request is 220,000,
Yes,
okay. And it's capital for the bill.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Did you
Oh.
like to say something?
I did, Madam Chair. I was just mentioning musical chairs around the room,
Yeah.
trying to make sure everyone has a spot to sit.
That's that and the boiler. So you brought up Joe isn't here, so maybe,
We sent you the detailed memo though, based on his testimony. We did the follow-up in writing.
Right. right, so do we need more information on the boiler?
I think the memo, Madam Chair, that was, she was.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, it's very consistent with our testimony and our request to the administration.
All right.
And we appreciate the increase you have given us. But we really would like to get an appropriate system. But that's,
Understand. Okay.
I do have a question regarding that. This is just regarding the boiler. So the memo that we had gotten from Secretary of Administration indicated that the reduction would have the project be delayed by several months. And the more recent memo from Joe is potentially delaying the project by 1 year or more. I think they both mentioned it's cost. Is there the difference between the months and 1 year or more?
so thank you, Senator. I would ask that you not get really stuck on the months, and I apologize if that confused. I think, as what was explained to you is that we have gone out to bid, we have a construction manager. So if they come in and we don't have our estimate, we've already reduced it in this estimate, then we have to scope back again. And we have to go through and we have to take back. I think that could be anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on what the bids are and depending on what it is. I think, and the other piece that Joe was referencing, and I think it sort of aligns to this, and he's not here, but then we talked about the lead time for the purchasing of the boiler. And then we talked about, well, and if we have to delay it, maybe we could do the mitigation and we could do the foundation. So that's where all of those timings come in. But Senator, it really does come down to what do we get from the construction manager? Are we 500,000 short? Are we 1.5 million short? And then we have to sit and go through the scope and reduce it. And I think that's the best explanation for that. And timing, giving ballparks like that is probably not, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I apologize if there was any confusion there. Because if it's 200,000, I doubt it will be based on the market. That, maybe it would be less than 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So it is really that scope of work, and then what do you take out, and how do you adjust that and work with the construction manager? And the money that Joe outlined for this project is coming from a partnership with our construction manager. It's not BGS sitting in the back room and sort of doing estimates. And so they've given us based on their experience, their knowledge, what it looks like, what the number is. But again, the bid environment is the bid environment, and that always impacts. Did that make sense, members?
Yes,
Yeah.
that answers the question.
Thank you.
The number of months actually did make a difference for me.
Well,
When I first thought about this, because we can still get the project going, they can still be heated, they're doing it by fuel, but a delay of a year is different from several
Yeah.
months in terms of just.
And we're
Right.
also worried about the
Right.
chimney. I think Joe talked
Oh,
about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But I just
Yes.
have to clarify, I heard two different numbers on this clawback. What is the amount, Scott, that we're talking about?
For the women's prison, Senator, there is 1.5 million that would be coming due next year, so you would see that brought back to the capital bill. And then, I think Commissioner, the other number, she was saying 800,000 of them, not mistaken, Commissioner, that they might need for the current renovation plan.
But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So just to follow up to that, we have put right now $500 in cash towards the women's prison fees, and we can't touch the cash now because the cash is kind of locked up.
Technically, we could, if we wanted to do some sort of lower amendments, okay? It's
But we don't want-
more complicated.
Yeah.
That we're leaving that alone. And let's just say, for sake of discussion, we wanted to have $1.5 million following kind of what your thought was, Senator Plunkett. And so that would still leave us with $500,000 more. Sort of to play with, if you follow me, I'm taking $1.5 million. And I want to have $1.5 million in the women's prison piece. I already have 500, so I'm putting $1 million in there. Can I separate out the other $500,000, or do I have to put that whole 1.5 in that bracket?
It's fungible, so once you bring it back into the bottom line,
I can use it wherever I want, so I could take that other $500,000 and put it back into the boiler and actually get the boiler whole potential. Because
I think the answer to that is that's possible. Do we want to?
No, I'm just throwing out,
Yeah.
trying to make sure I understand what's possible, not possible, how we could use the money.
mechanically possible, then it's just the will of the committee as to what the committee wants to do.
Understood.
Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility that we have now. I guess had, but weren't really talking about. Okay. Any other items? So tomorrow we'll have more. Well, I want to take some time and go through this, and if anybody wants to work with me, I think I know what, I think I know what you want. Yeah. Yeah. But I want to have a chance to work with, Jeffo and council and vice chair to just come up with, an update for tomorrow. I also am gonna ask, Senator Clarkson to come in and just talk about her experience with the EVs, because I think that's important. And it's specifically the EVs that serve the state house. So I'm just giving, I just want to give you a heads up.
And I understand that, and we can talk about it tomorrow and which ones. I'm just concerned.
No, I know. The female stuff,
You know,
right.
like, I mean, they haven't been done, but we don't want to put them in and have to rip them out because of what we are doing for infrastructure.
I understand. But there's a timeline and whatever. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
All right. So does anyone have anything else? Okay, so we are adjourned.